Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today's Tech Talk. My name is Subir Singh. I lead Global Partner Management for AWS Industrial Partners. Here at AWS, I'm responsible to support technology partners to build and grow their software business with AWS. We have an exceptional speaker with us today. We will be discussing how you can drive plant floor actions to meet ESG goals. Today, customers, legislators, and investors are demanding manufacturers to prioritize the environment and communities they operate within and depend upon. Now, companies are responding by setting transformative ESG goals, but the path to operationalize is often unclear. Today, we will hear from our AWS partner, GE Digital, how they are innovating new circularity and sustainability solutions to help customers deconstruct their sustainability visions into the processes, routines, and action plans needed within their factories. With that, I'd like to introduce our guest. With more than 30 years serving in automation and industrial data management, Steve Pawlowski. Steve is Vice President Product Management for GE Digital. Welcome, Steve. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Sapir. Pleasure to be here, folks. I look forward to spending the next hour with you and sharing our vision of how we can help our customers achieve their ESG sustainability and move towards solutions that support circular economy based initiatives.
Thank you, Steve. So I'd like to cover the basics first. All attendees will be on mute during this presentation. However, we do encourage you to ask questions by submitting them. We will answer as many as we can at the end of the webinar. What I hope you'll take away from this session is that we as leaders can transform our businesses sustainably. Today, you'll learn how to move from ESG goals to actions, understand how to generate real cost savings from ESG initiatives, and discover how customers are leveraging GE Digital solutions and AWS to support manufacturing ESG outcomes. So let's get started. First, let's take a moment to understand what ESG means. ESG is the extent to which a company works to support its sustainability and ethical impact. It stands for environmental, social, and governance. Environmental impact refers to conservation and protection of natural environment with focus but not limited to carbon emissions, natural resource management, and ethical treatment of animals. Social impact focuses on relationships with employees, suppliers, clients, and communities by workforce diversity, equal pay, and health and safety policies. Governance focuses on standards for company leadership, risk controls, and shareholder rights with mechanisms around board structure, executive compensation, and tax strategy. So to set the stage for this webinar, I want to cover how AWS can help. The term sustainability is a broad field covering social, economic, as well as environmental aspects. United Nations definition of sustainability, which is also used by AWS, is meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. AWS is your partner in sustainability across two broad areas: sustainability of the AWS cloud and sustainability through the AWS cloud. Starting with sustainability of the AWS cloud, moving workloads to AWS positively impacts sustainability footprints for customers. In 2019, AWS commissioned a report on carbon emissions of the cloud versus typical enterprise data centers, which found AWS has a 88% lower carbon footprint. We have been successful because we put measures in place to utilize increasing amounts of renewable energy, introduced water conservation practices, and are producing AWS processes that utilize much lower energy. And with the climate pledge, we plan to be carbon neutral by 2040 and are on path to 100% renewable energy by 2025. So moving to sustainability through the AWS cloud, AWS has more than 200 services across a huge number of domains. Customers and partners like GE Digital can use these services to build sustainability solutions to accelerate their as well as their customers' sustainability outcomes. So today, let's hear from Steve how GE Solutions and AWS Cloud can help you meet your ESG goals at the plant floor. Steve, welcome again.
Yes, Subir. So let's first talk a little bit about who GE Digital is and why this notion of helping customers with their ESG goals, sustainability, and transition to circular economy is important to us as an entity. Just a brief safe harbor disclaimer. There is some forward-looking information in this document. If you're interested in making buying decisions, please do that with after full discussion with your GE Digital representative. We look at the role of GE Digital, right? Our focus is helping our customers solve their toughest challenges by putting industrial data to work. We're proud to be an AWS partner. We've met their partner industrial software competency requirements. And really our goal here is to collaborate with AWS and leverage our technology, our capabilities, along with the power of the AWS cloud to bring solutions to our customers to help them solve their operational and productivity problems. And fundamentally, when we think about ESG, right, it really is aligned with what our heritage is, which is helping customers deliver value from the data that their processes and plants produce. Right, our primary set of solutions are industrial control and monitoring solutions, along with analytics and predictive analytic capabilities that help customers leverage the data that their processes and equipment produce and create visualization and reporting and optimization of their processes based on that data. And we do this for thousands and thousands of customers around the world. We've got 500,000 deployed applications in a wide variety of industries, from CPG and food and bev to discrete parts manufacturing to automotive to processes, power, and water treatment. So we're a very significant player in the industrial market space, really focused on helping customers drive productivity. And in the case of ESG, really there's a notion there around how does productivity apply to the notion of reducing carbon, reducing power, reducing water consumption. We have a wide portfolio of solutions which are focused on leveraging the power of the data generated by the equipment in customers' plants. We provide HMI SCADA applications, which allows the operators to interact with that equipment. We combine that HMI SCADA information along with data that we've stored out of the production equipment in our historian, whether that be on the cloud or on-prem. We contextualize that data and help customers understand and manage the production of material through their operations with Proficy Plant Applications, our market-leading manufacturing execution system. And we combine that with analytic capabilities, both Proficy Operations Analytics and Proficy C-Sense, to enable customers to build optimization algorithms that help them understand what's going on in their operations, how can they best optimize for the outcomes that they're trying to capture, and actually close the loop in their operations, where the results of these algorithms can be used to adjust the operating parameters of the process. And that can include heating and cooling loads. That could include the processing of whether it be water or of goods through the manufacturing, again, focused on a desired outcome in terms of optimization and power consumption, water consumption, other utility consumption could be one of the elements that are optimized for. So as we now shift our focus specifically to targeting ESG in manufacturing, what we find, and this is as we talk to our customer base, right? ESG is becoming much more important as a topic from where it was even 2 years ago. This is a survey from Industry Week, or survey results based on a US survey where 77% of industrial customers that were surveyed indicated that sustainability was important or very important to their company, leaving only 23% of companies where that's really not something that they're focused on. And so the question is, what's driving that, right? Why is this important? For some customers, this is really around productivity, reducing raw material, reducing energy costs, right? Though if I can reduce raw material, I reduce cost to produce product. If I reduce energy costs, I reduce cost to produce product. So there's a profitability aspect to this. There's a regulation aspect to this, and we'll talk a little bit more about that on the next slide. But regulators are starting to impact the decision-making processes of companies with respect to carbon utilization, energy utilization. There are market-facing elements. We work with customers on as they get on their journey. Perhaps they want to position themselves in the market as carbon neutral or energy neutral, or fully using renewable power, as Subir talked about Amazon, right? And they're doing that because not only is it good for the planet, but frankly, consumers are recognizing companies that make those moves. Or we work today with a large brewer down in the Australia, New Zealand market, who's seen a significant positive uptick in their sales once they went carbon neutral, and we're able to sort of document that and make that statement to the market. And lastly, supply chain, right? If you can reduce the inputs into your processes, right, that minimizes the amount of material that has to be brought into your processes, which enables you to actually improve the reliability of your supply chain, because you're using less raw material. So there's a wide variety of reasons that customers tell us why they're interested in this. One of those key reasons is what's going on in terms of the sort of financial markets and government regulation. So you've got firms like BlackRock who are driving sustainability initiatives at customers. You've got SEC looking at doing reporting regulations that will force manufacturers to document as part of their annual reports carbon consumption. In Europe, there are carbon taxes that are rising rapidly to help drive companies to reduce their carbon footprint. So there are a wide variety of sort of regulator and governmental issues that are driving the importance of ESG. And this actually drives an interesting element as we talk to customers, right? As we talk to sort of OT people in the organizations, the people responsible for the operations within a plant, oftentimes we don't get the same level of interest or excitedness about the topic of ESG as when we talk to the CEOs, the CIOs, CIOs being tasked by CEOs to help drive ESG, and how are they going to do reporting and collect that data, right? So there's a dichotomy today that we see as we talk to customers between sort of the C-suite and the focus that the C-suite has versus the actual operations of the organization. And we do see that changing in some of our customers. And I do see that this is that trend of the message around ESG and sustainability and all the way to circularity. We do believe is going to push more and more into the operations side of manufacturing, because frankly, it's really the operations team that can actually have the impact on improving improving sustainability and improving the energy consumption of the plant. So companies are on a journey today, right? We said 77% of companies are saying this is important, yet the message hasn't necessarily made it all the way down from the C-suite into operations. And operations is such an important piece of this because, frankly, it's the process data, it's the energy consumption at the machine level or at the line level or at the shop level, right? That is so important for driving these goals. Oftentimes, while the manufacturing processes generate tremendous amounts of information, right? Oftentimes it's not available to use cases outside of perhaps what's that operator seeing on a SCADA screen or on an HMI screen that helps them sort of control the process. So a big piece of what we're engaged with customers is how do they take advantage of the data that they have to be able to optimize for sustainability goals while still operating the plant efficiently, and focusing on how do they reduce raw material consumption or improve quality, right? Those are the things that our customers have traditionally asked us to do, and now they're asking us to help them move towards helping them with ESG. And so key elements here are, trend towards digitization, right? Which is how do we put more data in context into the hands of people that can make the right decisions, combined with that sort of known desired outcome for improving sustainability, raw material utilization, utilities utilization, focusing on sort of the productivity element there. And so really our job is to help our customers harness all of the data that they've got coming out of this process equipment, provide them with capabilities to put the information in the right context into the right people's hands, and then actually help them with optimization capabilities to inflict change. From a GE perspective, we've gone over our 100+ years, right? We've gone through a series of sort of evolutions of our company, and as Larry Culp came in, he brought really the focus on lean practices into our organization. And so, from a lean perspective, we are very focused on driving out waste. And when you think about ESG and sustainability, right, it is very aligned with this notion of driving continuous improvement around reduction in raw material costs, reduction in energy costs. And so there's a whole series of sort of lean practices that we often help our customers with and help them understand how do they use the capability of our technology to best wring out their operations, reduce defects. If you're producing a defective product, there was raw material, there was energy that went into that defective product. There's going to be materials and energy consumed to fix that defective product to perhaps be able to sell it. Overproduction, right? Overproduction consumes raw material and consumes energy. Queuing, not utilized resources, again, sources of consumption of energy and other resources that work against sustainability goals. The reduction in transportation costs. So you're better off from an ESG perspective if you're bringing in material from a local supplier as opposed to a supplier from halfway around the world. Well, we help we help our customers gain insights into sort of the carbon load associated with raw material. And some of that carbon load is driven by the transportation element of how that material got to that plant, et cetera, right? So, we bring this notion of looking at problems from a lean perspective and helping customers drive optimization, and are now applying that mindset to ESG and sustainability. One of a couple of the terms that we often hear customers talk about and perhaps not necessarily understand is carbon neutral and net zero and wages, right? So these are three terms that I think it's important for us to understand, right? So carbon neutral doesn't necessarily mean, no carbon was used to produce a product, right? There's carbon going to be used from an energy perspective or from a material perspective in an awful lot of the both raw materials and the production processes, right? If you're using energy, if it's not renewable energy, right, it's going to be carbon-based typically, right? So there are elements to becoming carbon neutral, which is a more focus on, renewable energy sources being brought in. So that addresses sort of the electricity in wages or the steam in wages, right? How did that steam get created? Well, it required a heat source, or the electricity required to run motors or lighting, right? So if you can move towards more renewable sources on your way to becoming carbon neutral, right, you're going to impact wages, and wages, again, being water, air, gas, electricity, and steam, not the dollars that you're paying your workers, right? So there's carbon neutral goals, right? How do people set strategies around becoming carbon neutral? And so there's going to be carbon that's consumed, right? So then they often have offset programs, whether that be, planting trees or other offset strategies to becoming carbon neutral. And then there's net zero, right? Net zero is about how do they become a net zero consumer of electricity and steam. So that might be they're using renewable energy. Perhaps they're deploying solar on the roof of their manufacturing facility. They're at a position where they're pushing as much electricity back onto the grid as perhaps they're consuming, right? So they're different mindset from perhaps carbon neutral. Net zero would be more energy focused. And then there's driving, again, wages, right? Water, air, gas, electricity, and steam, right? If you can use less water in your processes, number one, that's going to save you on your water bills, driving productivity and profitability. But frankly, it's that water took chemicals and energy to cleanse. So that the production of clean water drives consumption of energy and chemicals. Compressed air, right? Air compressors require energy. Gas, as in natural gas, right? That's a carbon source, all right? So minimizing the gas that's being consumed, perhaps for ovens or other heating applications, which can be done through optimization algorithms that we can help customers apply. Driving gas consumption down, driving electricity consumption down, and I talked about steam. Steam requires water, and it requires typically gas or electricity to generate. So, driving down steam, right, helps a customer reduce their energy footprint and has a positive impact on their sustainability and their ESG goals. And so from our perspective, right, we take the technologies that we've had in the market for a significant period of time that are focused on productivity, right? So Proficy Plan applications really helping customers drive, material productivity, better quality, reducing downtime of equipment, all things which can drive can drive the reduction in wages, drive the reduction in raw materials, drive the reduction in energy consumption. We store that data in our historian. We use our batch execution system to help customers compare, how much processing time did one batch take versus another, because a key element here is how can they capture data and then HMI SCADA to interact with the machinery. So how can they capture that data? How can they digitize and combine that data from material and resources, trace back the information that's come from that equipment? And what we're starting to build today and look at is how do we take this technology that's been used for traditional productivity enhancement and leverage that towards ESG, right? To help drive the measuring of the use of those materials or of those utilities, to use less and to use better. And it brings me back to that, many of you that are US based, right? You may remember, right, the slogans that government was promoting around, reduce, reuse, and recycle, right? It's really that same notion here, except now being applied to industrial applications, industrial production applications. How do you reduce the material, reduce the energy? How do you reuse goods, whether that be pallets, whether that be scrap back into saleable material, or how do you recycle goods? And that will also sort of bring us to circularity, right? I haven't talked about circularity very much, and we will talk a bit about it later. But this notion of the circular economy is how do durable goods get produced that can then perhaps be reclaimed by the manufacturer or other entity, remanufactured, put back into use to extend the usable life before perhaps that they're recycled at the end of their usable life. So again, this is about how do we get more usable value from the raw material and energy that it took to produce an original item. So it's a different aspect of sustainability, but it's, again, all focused on reducing the consumption per unit of utility of that item. So as we think about applying our portfolio, I'm now going to talk about a series of applications where our customers have deployed our technology to help them solve some of their ESG challenges. So a large food company in the UK, right, has taken our capabilities that they had in our with our applications as they deployed them in their organization, to apply the analytics capability we have to the data that they had from their manufacturing execution system. So their manufacturing execution system, Proficy Plan Apps, helps them understand downtime, quality issues, and the waste associated with production through scrap, right? What we helped them apply was our C-Sense analytic tools to help them understand raw material in the context of raw material usage, in the context of the production of products, to help them understand how to better run their processes. And so we were able to, by combining the use of analytics with MES data, able to help them reduce their production material waste by 75%. They improved their quality and reduced customer complaints by 38%. They improved their overall equipment efficiency by 9%, which means they're, instead of perhaps running their machines at 80% efficiency, they were running at 89. So they effectively gained machine capacity, 9% machine capacity, without doing anything other than running the processes more efficiently. So they got throughput through their machines, which allowed them to produce more in the same amount of time. So what does that do? That avoids downtime. Downtime comes with energy waste. They're able to produce more product in that same, across that same set of equipment, and drive less waste. And they reduced the raw material input costs, so driving $300,000 a year of savings. That savings largely accounted towards their sustainability goals. They reduced waste. They improved their uptime of their equipment and thus reduced energy consumption per unit produced. And they reduced the raw material which took energy to produce and to transport into their facility. So big impacts on their sustainability goals. Skjern Paper, right? One of our customers in Denmark, right, had a challenge around reducing process variation to help reduce chemical usage, scrap, and lower costs. Again, this is taking data from processes, that using our technology to collect the data off their processes, using our analytics capability to analyze that the data produced by their equipment in a way that they hadn't been able to do before, to monitor, to predict outcomes, to simulate, and then to do closed loop control based on algorithms that were tuned to focus on reducing chemical usage, right? And by reducing chemical while improving quality. So they were able to reduce scrap, reduce raw material, which drove lower costs. And that chemical usage, came with a carbon footprint, came with an energy footprint. So that, again, driving productivity very closely tied to sustainability goals. In water and wastewater, right, we help customers improve energy efficiency and reduce pump failures by collecting data from our HMI SCADA systems into our Historian, which provides very efficient long-term storage. Historian, by the way, is available today as an AWS cloud-native application through the marketplace, and so their customers are now able to leverage that carbon benefit of using the Amazon infrastructure rather than running Historian and some of our other applications in on-prem servers. Right, so they are able to use the optimization algorithms on top of the data that they've collected into our Historian to ensure efficient operation. So they did closed loop analytic modeling of those pumps and drove optimization of how the pumps were run. And they used AI and ML based tools within cSense to predict issues driven by vibrations and bolt failures, right, which reduced a series of issues, right, reduced failure that resulted in faster response time to problem, less troubleshooting, less damages to pumps and motor equipment. Because if you have to replace a pump or replace a motor, right, that comes with a carbon impact, right? The cost of taking a proactive maintenance from a carbon perspective, proactive maintenance to solve a vibration issue on a pump or on a motor, right? Far less carbon impact than replacing or rebuilding that pump and motor. So clear linkages here between typical operational desired outcomes of higher operational efficiency to sustainability goals. We worked very closely with one of the world's largest consumer packaged goods manufacturers. They use our technology to run their operations. And what they wanted to be able to do is they were focused on driving sustainability goals. Their goal was to drive the global manufacturing energy footprint down by 5% at their production facilities. So what we've helped them do is use the information that they're collecting today to run their operation and make that information available in our analytics capability to minimize the energy while running a process and to identify operational changes that would drive them to minimize energy while not running. Think about new cars today with automatic engine start stop, right? If you're at a stoplight, the engine shuts off. Well, why is it doing that? It's doing that to improve overall energy efficiency, right? You take your foot off the brake, the engine restarts, you step on the gas, and you're consuming energy while you're actually creating value, which is you're driving down the road. We can apply those same kinds of concepts to manufacturing to have processes minimize the energy usage. Perhaps it's not cost effective to shut down a piece of equipment completely, but perhaps there are things you can do to minimize energy while not running, to be looking for leakage while not running. If you can take the manufacturing data in context, you're off shift, well, you still see water consumption. Well, why is water being consumed in a manufacturing facility when production's not running, right? Perhaps there's a leaky valve. Perhaps there's some other leak. Perhaps someone has not been educated on turning a valve off. Perhaps that could be automated, right? So there's a set of steps that can be taken from a lean perspective around capturing data, understanding what the base case is, looking for opportunities, making change, rebaselining, looking for new opportunities, making additional change. So there's the continuous improvement mindset that comes with lean, applied to this type of application. And so what they found was they found an estimated up to as little as 30 days and up to 90-day payback from spending on the sort of engineering configuration effort that it took when they already had much of the technology in our portfolio deployed at managing their operations. They needed to use that information differently, right? And so this is an example of a dashboard where they were putting the historian data, what was being consumed in context with with production, and being able to actually compare data across products or data across lines for the same product to understand what their best in class opportunity was, which line produced the same product with the best energy efficiency. Then they could go study that line, understand the difference between that line and other lines, either within the same facility or across the world. And here's another place where the cloud helps, right? Not just improvement within a plant, at the enterprise level, right? It's the enterprises that are reporting, their carbon consumption or their ESG targets and progress towards their targets to the market, right? So at the enterprise level, take advantage of collection of data and centralizing data from all of the plants in an organization. And Proficy Historian for AWS helps customers with this, and then be able to use the analytic capabilities that are on the cloud. In this particular case, Proficy Operations Analytics, to look at that data and be able to produce a dashboard that helps a customer understand what's their best operating line for a given product, or within a plant or within a line, right? Which products, what was the carbon footprint of various products that they were being producing at a given facility, to really understand how can they take what's best in class and make changes at other places to make those improvements. The National Library of France, right? So this is really around HVAC management. And so we worked with that customer and solution provider to implement a solution across all of their facilities to help them manage humidity, lighting, and air conditioning and access control with one of our HMI SCADA platforms, which helped drive energy consumption and costs down by 20% over a 4-year period. So that's a huge savings, and it's dramatically beneficial to the environment. And then I think the last example that I have today is a global biogas customer where Ormatic uses standard software modules, and they use our iFix and our historian to interact with the processes, collect data, and then store that data for real-time and historical trend analysis. We provided they were able to drive better uptime and improved operator visibility of their actual processes, higher reliability that delivered better improved controls for safer operation, better ability to respond to alarms, and to drive cost calculations and optimize waste reduction. Again, waste being a critical element, waste reduction being a critical element in sustainability goals achievement. So really what I've talked about is how do we help our customers now on that sustainability journey? For us, the next phase is helping customers as they move from, today, what's the linear economy, where you're taking raw material, you're that's going into a product. That product is being used until its end of life, and then it's being discarded, right? The notion of the circular economy, which is really focused on reducing first-time use materials or resources, virgin resources, right? How do you take those materials, put them into product, potentially recycle and or biocycle that raw material after the use of the product initially, or remanufacture the product so that it can be put back into use multiple times, get more life out of the raw material that went into that product, and then recover waste after that product is no longer remanufacturable. So you've sort of maximized the utilization of those original virgin resources throughout a potentially multi-life cycle of a product, and so you've maximized that value. So there's a critical change in a whole series of processes there. First, designing processes for reusability, and this could be actual products, it could be packaging of products, right? So there are different aspects to this, but it's a new area for us to be looking at with our customers. And I've got a gentleman on my staff, Ben Whiteman, who's focused on this task of helping customers and helping GE build solutions around working towards the circular economy. So if this is something you're interested in, reach out to Ben. We'd like to engage with you and understand the challenges you're trying to solve, how you see the circular economy and track and trace capabilities throughout a product's life cycle as it applies to your use case, and help partner potentially with GE to advance your goals, right? That's really what we're about in this space, is trying to figure out really where can we take the technology that we have, partner with AWS to bring new capabilities into this space and help customers that solve these problems. So just in summary, right? Our goal here is supporting our customers' sustainability goals in the same way that we've been working with them for 20 to 30 years, helping them drive operational productivity. Because frankly, I hope as you've captured through the conversation, sustainability and ESG goals for us are very tied to operational productivity. And we believe it's important for us to help our customers see that and leverage the investment that they've made in our technology to help drive traditional quality and efficiency improvements, and use those same capabilities to drive sustainability improvements. And with that, we're going to open it up for Q&A. So please remember to type your questions in, and I or Subir or Ben will try to answer as many of those questions as potentially possible. Thank you.